Okay, let's call this Almont Board of Education work session meeting to order on January 21st, 2025 at 6 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Burrow, roll call, please.
Ms. Rotarius?
Here.
Mr. Burns? Here. Mr. Wade? Here. Ms. Frederickson?
Here.
Mr. Burrow? Here. Ms. Smith?
Here.
We have 6 present.
Adoption of the agenda. Any additions or deletions?
No.
This will bring us to our first questions and comments from the audience, and this is pertaining to anything on the agenda. Sorry, my back is pretty well. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Thank you. There will be another chance at the end of the meeting. Any questions or comments from the Board of Education?
Yes, for communications, we're going to start with a brief presentation from Zach Zimmerman, our athletic director in the student athletic school. So Zimmerman, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. You just want me right up in the middle then? Or?
Sure, that'd be great, wherever you're comfortable.
Oh, okay. Colin, you said it was control what?
Windows.
Windows, okay.
Yep.
Right. Good evening, my name is Zach Zimmerman. For those of you guys that I've not met yet, I was hired in July 1st for the athletic director in the student's position. A little bit of background on me. I graduated from Anchor Bay High School. I went to go play college football for a year, came back home, went back to coaching at Anchor Bay High School. So I was at Anchor Bay for 2 years, the first time around in various different coaching roles in both basketball and football. Went over to Centerline High School for 5 years, where I really got my love for education, working with students and specifically student athletes as well. Was at Centerline as a district substitute teacher, and then I also went over and went into a college advisor role, working in the counseling office over there, helping students figure out their next path, whether it be career, trade school, college, whatever that may be. And I got hands-on experience working in both as an assistant, as a student relations director was the title of the position, students. Got to work hand in hand with him as I went to, they would pull me nonstop for different tasks and whatnot. So I got some really good hands-on experience in that being a student's role there, as well as helping out at athletic events with the athletic director through that experience. I coached there for 5 years. I was an assistant head coach, offensive coordinator, strength and conditioning coach, various different roles. From there, my contract was eliminated. The position as a whole was a community service position. So fulfilled the contract, and then they bring the next person in. They tried to create a full-time position, did not have the budget to do so. Went over to Clintondale High School. I was an attendance coordinator, essentially worked with truancy officers throughout Macomb County to try to keep kids in school or get them to school and find those barriers that would prevent them from coming to school. So that was a lot of experience, something I never planned on doing before, knocking on addresses all over Detroit and everywhere else, and having meetings with families. From there, they created a college and career readiness coordinator position, working with the whole district in grades K through 12. So I fulfilled that role for the past 2 years prior to coming over here. They had went through budget cuts, and that role was eliminated as well. So you guys at Dean of Students position and athletic director position. Applied on a whim. Before you knew it, I was in Ms. Vaughn's office interviewing a couple days later. then throughout that time at Glendale, I coached 2 years at Sterling Heights Stevenson. And then prior to coming over here, I was coaching at Anchor Bay again as a varsity offensive line coach. So I've coached the past 11 years, worked in education since I was probably about 21 years old. A couple of things I wanted to highlight that Mr. Frederick and I were working on is safety. The MHSAA created new policies this year called EAPs, Emergency Action Plans. So every high school head coach has to have an EAP. And how you do it is totally up to you as a school. I created a template, the MHSAA has a template, and we work through that with the coaching staff. They can do whichever template they would like. It's all this rough draft. And then from there, Mr. Wade went through it himself this year. I think it's a really good thing. One of the things that it asks you to do within that EAP is have a student grab an AED in the case of an emergency situation, however that works out. As you can assume, it's not easy when you're a cross-country coach or a track coach or bowling even that I ran into this spring to go and obtain an AED. You're on the run, you're on the move, you're outside. So that was a huge concern that I met with the coaching staffs about. So we went forward, Ms. Vaughn and Mr. Frederick and I, we went forward and purchased 2 additional AEDs. One will be placed on the south side of the track barn, which will be accessible to all of our spring sport athletes, those athletes that are primarily outside, along with football, anyone that would need it in that situation. Additionally, at the middle school, for the games that we have here for middle school winter sports that are in the gym, we shut the gates. There's no AED accessible. So we're mounting up an AED within the gated hallway that would be accessible for our coaching staff. Additionally, we have one of our travel AEDs for girls middle school basketball this year, and we gave that to the coaching staff just in case until we get that on. Additionally, all coaches have to be CPR certified. The MHSAA had a huge crackdown on implementing that this year. So even middle school coaches, which was not previously required, and so on and so forth. I highly, highly, highly encourage all of our coaches to obtain a CPR AED certification. I think on record right now, I think I have 1 volunteer coach that does not, which is pretty good and something I'm very proud of. Moving forward in the next coming years, there's going to be certain stipulations with where you can obtain that CPR cert, so our coaching staff will have to do that. We'll provide ample opportunities here at the school for them to meet those requirements. Additionally, the iChat on all the volunteers. It was being done, but we're tracking it a lot better now. Every single adult, athletics-wise, that comes into contact with our student athletes has been iChat verified. So that was something that I was very happy with as well. When I first got hired into the role, there was 3 negative internal account balances. I had no idea how that could occur. You have to submit paperwork. You have to be approved to purchase something. I don't know where and if that was being done. Debbie Lemon, Ms. Merrifield, and myself met a lot when I first came in. Mrs. Lemon and Ms. Merrifield have been phenomenal in getting that back to where it needs to be. There's now a live running account balance document that we all 3 of us work off of. So coaches submit a form for purchase, a request for quote for purchase. They submit the quote, they submit the paperwork. We check to make sure that money's in their account. We say yes, no, and that's it. It's a pretty simple process. I'm happy to say so far we have no negative internal account balances since July. So that was just an extra little thing in there. Mr. Merrifield and I meet quite often, I would say. Just this past week we met already. What was it, Monday? Mm-hmm. My days are getting lost already. Monday we met already about some big purchases coming through in athletics and verifying that everything's in and so on and so forth. So been really happy with where the financials are there. A couple additional coaching rule changes. This was slightly implemented before I came in, but trying to limit the reimbursements as much as possible. That was another thing that we worked on together. Limit reimbursements as much as possible. Receipts have to be returned within 60 days. The extra step form for quote approval, and then the fundraising request form, and then must submit that proof of CPR. A couple new resources that we've been able to bring in. Almont Athletics Facebook page. I do my best. I'm not perfect with it. It's a one-man show trying to run it. The sports boosters do a much better job than me. I'll be the first one to say that. But with that being said, trying to be better and better with that, trying to find the time. Typically I'm posting at night after events. It's 10 p.m., 11 p.m. So trying to get all that information out there to keep our families informed. Another thing I want to highlight is Emmy Sullivan. Emmy Sullivan's one of our students here at Almont. And she's in ed tech for graphic design. The instructor came to me and said, hey, would you take in Emmy so she can do some graphic design work for you guys, so on and so forth. The Sports Boosters just approved a software that allows for her to make graphics a lot easier, more up-to-date software, and she's going to be putting out some awesome graphics and some score updates and whatnot. She's been at our games taking pictures and videos. It's been awesome to have Emmy involved. And then additionally, a volunteer physical therapist on call for Mondays to evaluate previous week injuries available to all coaches. Drake McComb has been awesome. He's out of Health Quest in NY City. He's the owner and the manager there. He is a doctor of physical therapy. He has came out here, say 5+ times to evaluate one of our student athletes for us. Mr. Wade had one himself on cross country. He's been phenomenal to work with. When we haven't had an athletic trainer for football games because he got married this year, so Bobby Budlong is incredible. He's probably one of the biggest blessings in this role. And he's an athletic trainer and a physical therapist, which is very rare to find. Bobby's something I inherited from Mr. Gauthier that was in this role prior to me, and Mr. Loosby. We subcontract him out for football, cheerleading, and wrestling events here. I would love to get him here for more things as well, but obviously that costs money. Additionally, Mr. McComb, though, going back to him, that comes out on Mondays, he is coming and volunteering for the cheer meet that we're hosting tomorrow with all 8, ourselves included, BWAC schools there, as well as volunteered at a few of our football games this past fall. So he's been a huge blessing to have as well. Wanted to highlight, this was something I was incredibly proud of. Wouldn't have been able to do it without Mrs. Vaughn. Secured a grant for us, grabbed a bunch of snacks for us, but we had 6 student athletes. We brought back the BWAC Sportsmanship Summit. It has not gone on for quite some time. We brought it back this past fall, and the tradition's going to stay alive as Richmond's hosting it next year. The feedback from we had 6 student athletes and an AD from each school present. Was able to get Brad Bush, who's the assistant director of the MHSAA, out to speak to our student athletes. He also does a huge part in the statewide MHSAA Sportsmanship Summit. The feedback from the BWAC Sportsmanship Summit was they liked ours 10 times better than the MHSAA one because they were working in cohorts with student athletes they come into contact with throughout their respective sports seasons. When you keep it local, you're going to have a lot more in common, generally, than when you go statewide. So there was a lot of great feedback there. Oh, I apologize. We had food provided as well as t-shirts from the Village T-shirt Company. I think the t-shirts came out awesome. I live in Richmond. My fiance and I were grocery shopping not too long ago, and I saw one of the student athletes there wearing the BWAC Sportsmanship Summit. Grabbed my fiance, I'm like, hey, we did that. So I was pretty proud of that as well. Another thing we're doing, I don't know if this was done previously or not, but Jerry Kozak, who is a parent, as well as our middle school wrestling coach, partnered with us to do Student Athlete of the Month through Health Quest Physical Therapy. So essentially, we go through, he comes in once a month, and we take a picture, he gives them a certificate and a gift card, respective coaches nominate the student athletes. It's hard to go through all the different nominations, try to hit every sport respectively and give everybody the honoration that we can. But that's another awesome resource for our student athletes. Couple college signings. I want to highlight our student athletes here. A couple of our college signings so far this year has been Lauren Webster, who signed with Indiana Tech for softball, Avery Peak, Davenport for soccer, Hunter Ross, Calumet for bowling, and Brooklyn Bunch, Wayne State for softball. Very proud of our student athletes, got to meet a lot of them. When they're seniors, they have ed tech, you don't get to talk to them a lot, so those conversations were pretty interesting when they came to me and go, so I'm signing tomorrow, and you know, there was a little bit of that. So it was awesome though, I was glad to be a part of it, and congratulations to our student athletes. Dean of Students role. One of the biggest things that I was afraid of in transitioning school to school is that I'm able to build relationships with students. And those relationships, as we all know, if we've done education in the room, you know, they carry on for a long time, and you're always scared to go build new ones and how the kids are going to perceive you to be. I was I was blown back. It was a moment where I took a step back in getting these thank you cards during Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving. And a couple students, I had a plethora of them come through. I posted 3 of them on there. But I'd say one of the biggest things in the Dean of Students role is building relationships. And still have a lot of work to do there, without a doubt. Time's going to help with that. But nonetheless, wanted to highlight that. Additionally, in the Dean of Students role, I work with restorative practices with Mr. Spears being implemented. Mr. Spears and I both come from restorative backgrounds. Mr. Spears worked in Chicago. I worked in Clintondale and Centerline. We'll call it Warren, still Macomb County. Majority of my students are from the city of Detroit. So working through those restorative practices and trying to implement those here has been a process, and it's going well. Town halls is another thing that we brought to the table to assist with the climate and culture. So each grade level comes in, we highlight certain things in the same presentation that we share with each grade level. We have them come up, voice any concerns that they may have, answer them if we can. If we can't, we get them an answer. We're also forming a student voice committee where they get to work and try to make change, create change throughout the school. Additionally, CSTAG training through the Peer ISD. It's been a learning process. It was new to me. Macomb County has something entirely different. But nonetheless, with Alicia Olson through the ISD, the CSTAG training's been awesome. Have gone through a couple of them so far. One-on-one meetings to assign discipline, meeting with discipline team to go over discipline situations, I-team meetings, intervention team meetings, and then being one of the district reps for IEPs. Couple challenges of the combined roles that I've had since coming in. I'd say the number one is time. The roles conflict with one. I thought they would go a lot more together when applying for the position and getting in than how they have gone thus far. Constantly trying to gauge what is the highest priority. You might have something blowing up in reference to a situation with a student during the school day, and you might have a game canceled and you have 2 hours to figure out referees or whatever that may be. That is the athletic part of that. So it's very difficult to go through all of that. The contract currently allows me to come in later in the day, but the dean role is neglected. And the type of employee that I am, I have a little bit of internal guilt with that. So trying to balance that and ask for help and get everything done still. Athletics is far more demanding of my time due to event planning, logistics, and scheduling. All day today, all night last night, I've been on the phone with the BWAC ADs, with coaching staffs. What do you mean we can't practice? I'm going through those conversations. My phone never stops ringing. That's the reality of the situation. Doesn't matter if it's 10 p.m., doesn't matter if it's 9 p.m., none of that matters. So, it's a lot to balance. Talk about the AD off hours, weekends and evenings, and then the implied expectation of unlimited access to. Do I have any questions?
Ms. Fred?
You had mentioned that everybody's gone through the iChat screening. Can you share with us what iChat actually does?
It's a form that the district already had when I first came in, that Mrs. Myers, who's assistant to Secretary Mrs. Vaughn, told us that coaches, anyone that comes into contact with our kids should go through it. Essentially, it's a simple background process. It comes back within 24 hours, and we figure out if they're clear or not from that 24 hours.
It comes back from who?
That part I'm not aware of.
Okay, so is this a driver's license that gets submitted or
No,
just a form?
just a form, yep. I
Okay.
can get you more answers on that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that.
Yep, absolutely.
Secondarily, as you look at your spring sports coming up,
Yep.
do you have any open positions, or are we all set to go for spring?
For spring, we are pretty well set. Have to have a meeting with Mr. Wade, talk about a few extra track things. But outside of that, we're pretty well set. Our prior middle school track and field coach would respectively like to not do it unless he absolutely has to do it. So we did post those 2 positions, but he has said that if we're not able to fill it, he'd be more than happy to come back and do it. So
Okay, and then what about fall?
going into fall, we are hiring currently right now for a
Okay.
volleyball coach, a boys tennis coach, golf. Thank you, and golf.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you for your time.
I have one.
Oh.
So you talked a lot about sounds like it's a big work-life balance.
Yep.
Do you have any thoughts or recommendations on how to address that? Are you working with Mr. Spear and Ron maybe to address that, or?
Yeah, we've had many conversations thus far already, from Mrs. Vaughn going, you need to go home, to Mr. Spear going, let me take this over. When your name's on it and your hands are in it, it's a little bit different having someone fill in when, you go through things. Just the other, a couple weeks ago, Mr. Spear shadowed me at a basketball game, so he could cover if we ever needed him to. And I think 3 things went wrong that normally don't go wrong in that particular day. I could go in detail about that. I won't for the sake of time, but we can talk another time about that. So you never know what, and I'm just trying to prevent a phone call and dealing with it again tomorrow. Additionally, every other BWAC athletic director is either just an athletic director or has a role combined with it. There's one who is out at Algonac, and he has an event supervisor and an assistant athletic director. He is an athletic director, assistant principal combo. They're the same size school as us, for example. So, I don't think there's any immediate fixes to it, but would be open to any conversation there to provide some input and see what we could possibly.
Well, I want to thank you. I hear a lot of good things about your.
I appreciate that. Thank you very
A lot
much.
of students in the high school building and whatnot so far, and the BWAC Sportsman Summit, that was awesome to bring back and having it come back at our school and go over so successfully. I appreciate everything that you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Yes, I'm sorry, my apologies. As I go back to my next note, I saw that there was a new account established for a nationals dance team under athletics. Okay, I'll go to Kathy on that.
Yep,
Okay, thank
something
you.
I'm not aware of.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
very
much.
much. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Now I gotta figure out how to stop sharing.
Technology
I'll
part.
add,
Hopefully when you walk out, it eventually turn off the screen.
I yell Colin's name quite often.
We all do.
I'm just for immediate help.
Next up for communications, we have Mr. Bruno for OP update on our request potentially for a Dean of Students.
Yeah, well, thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the Board of Education tonight about the need and the value of a Dean of Students at Orchard Primary. In addition to what I'm about to share with y'all, I provided y'all with a bit of a packet just outlining some of the challenges that our office team has outlined and how a Dean of Students would help solve those things. Because at the end of the day, our students, our teachers, and our families here at OP They deserve to have a dean of students serve our community, having someone who could provide them with the support and the care that they deserve. When we talk about that Almont advantage, we talk about giving every person who comes to our schools, whether it be a teacher, a student, a parent, that personalized care and support that they need so they know they're cared about and that they are valued. We have some of the best teachers that I've had the privilege of working with, some of whom are here tonight. We have a phenomenal group of students, some of whom are your own kiddos here, and just an incredibly supportive community that I am just overwhelmingly grateful for. But our big gap is currently we have one principal, one administrator serving 427 students, 27 teachers, and another 36 phenomenal support staff. There's a reason at our middle and high school we have a principal and a dean of students or a dean of students / athletic director serving there. The addition of a dean of students would really help us fulfill that Almont advantage. It would spread that load, give each of our stakeholders in our school that additional support within our school and help everybody thrive at Orchard Primary. So to illustrate that, I'd like to just share some stories and share some data with you about why this would be so valuable for our students. So first and foremost, I'd like to share just a typical kind of day outline of what a principal day would look like at Orchard Primary. On the left, you'll see the plan, and on the right, you'll see the reality and the gaps that are being caused by, that will be filled by having a dean of students at our story. So just for that day, to highlight, from the first couple hours of the day, Mrs. Merrifield and I were working on a really important bilingual grant, because as Orchard Primary Principal, it's always a role served filling out those title grants and different grants for our students. We had 2 teacher observations planned for that day as we're hitting that second round of walkthroughs, giving our teachers that coaching that they deserve. And then a special education meeting at the end of the day. And while we don't necessarily have those every day, you can almost guarantee in the day as a principal you'll have some kind of meeting with special education, 504 IEPs throughout the day. On the right, unfortunately, you see our day wasn't quite as planned. And none of our days ever go quite as planned, but oftentimes to the detriment of our students. So during that first 2-hour meeting, no less than 4 times did we have things come down to my office that I needed to immediately step out and address. And that doesn't include the 4 to 5 additional things that Mrs. Stone and Mrs. Niedermeyer, our 2 secretaries, stepped out and filled, and things that really would have been better served by having an administrator handle them. We had 4 different times where different teachers come down to talk about behavior or academic support. And I want to emphasize, that's what I'm here for. That's what an administrator is here for. Our teachers, they deserve to have a principal or a dean of students who can be there for them, to work with them. Because when we collaborate and we come up with great solutions for our kids, that's when we thrive. We're already a great place, but that's only going to serve our kids even more so. Ms. Merrifield and I did complete that grant. We're looking forward to hopefully getting around $15,000 in a bilingual grant that will further help serve our EL learners, which is just phenomenal for our kiddos. But having had a dean of students, we would have been able to more quickly complete that grant and get Mrs. Merrifield and I back to serving our school and our community. You'll also notice those 2 walkthroughs did not happen. I do apologize to our teachers earlier this week. Our planned walkthroughs to start last week did not happen due to just the rise of things that come up over the course of the day. But again, the dean of students would have been a great support person for those to serve and take care of some of those disciplinary things, working with our youngest learners. And then I do want to highlight too, well, I did make it to that last meeting. I was a little bit late. Apologies to the special ed team coming over from the ISD. And I was only able to even make it because Mrs. Stone and Mrs. Niedermeyer went that extra mile and said, we'll work with this child here. That's not in their job description. That's not their role. They do an amazing job already serving those kids. And I'm not trying to be well as me. Every one of us has busy days. All of us have crazy things that come up over the course of the day. But when our principals aren't able to serve as an instructional leader and be in those classrooms and supporting our teachers and sitting down and working with our kiddos, we're not living up that Almont advantage. With the addition of a dean of students, the principal is able to serve that role on that left-hand side, and we're able to work with our kiddos and give them the support that they need. It would just help us go a long way in being proactive to support all of our kids and all of our teachers. One of the ways we're trying to be proactive right now is that from that about 11:10 until 1:05, instead of working in my office, I work in the cafeteria. I sit there on my computer, I try to complete office tasks for our school, but it also gives me a really awesome checkpoint with our kids. It's a really valuable time. We have a lot of at-risk students who have a lot of high needs, and that need is only going to continue to grow just because the world is the world that we live in. And it's a really phenomenal thing. It also is a nice proactive piece of supporting discipline, because seeing that administrator there just gives our kiddos a little bit extra reminder to be on their best Radar behavior. It's awesome. I wouldn't trade having an administrator in there to support our kids. But the trade-off is that's anywhere between 2 and 3+ hours that I'm not able to be an instructional leader for our teachers. I'm not able to be in their classrooms giving them coaching. They're already phenomenal, but we all get better when we get that coaching. I'm not able to be reviewing curriculum and working on things to help support our teachers. At the end of the day, our principals should be instructional leaders, and adding that dean of students would really give us that opportunity. It would allow a dean to work with those students as frequently as possible. It would allow a principal to be an instructional leader supporting our teachers. At the end of the day, this isn't about me or anybody, it's really about our kids. It's about our kids and our teachers having that support. But to take another step back to, if you've ever been to OP, you've seen our front office ladies welcoming you. They're the friendliest, most helpful people you will probably ever meet in your life. Mrs. Stone and Mrs. Niedermeyer are phenomenal human beings and amazing at what they do. But right now, they're supporting anywhere between 5 and 10 students or other things that are coming to the office that really should be taken on by an administrator. They shouldn't be responsible for if a student comes down to work through a behavior problem that happened on the playground because the principal is tied up in something else. That's not their role. They have other tasks that they need to be doing. So they're losing an hour plus of their day doing that, which means they're sticking around after school to get those things done. And it also means our students aren't getting the support they deserve. At the end of the day, our role is to be here to support those students. During lunches and recesses from that 11:10 to 2:35, I'd invite you all to come see just the constant stream of kiddos that are coming through. Now, things like bumps and bruises and those phone calls about that, absolutely, that's what we have those lovely ladies for. Parents would rather see their caller ID than mine come up, I think, in most cases. I think people get a little nervous when they see my caller ID. So if you have kids, I hope you never see my caller ID come up. But their role should be able to be there to support kids, to support families as they walk in, and I should be the one handling discipline things. Similarly, we've seen a rise in behaviors, and again, it's not just here in Almont, it's everywhere you go around the country. I talk to administrator friends from different jobs I've had in the past, and they see that same rise of things. And so when we do have those major behaviors, we try as much as possible to keep kids in school suspension, those 4 to 5 times a year that we have those things, because sending a kid home to just sit at home and play video games and not get that support, we're doing that kid a disservice. But without the support of a dean of students, we're not able to really sit there and work with that kid, help them work through those challenges, help them get ready to make good choices when they go forward. Because ultimately, we want to send those kids over to this building here at the middle school and off to Mr. Zimmerman and his team at the high school being the most readily formed, amazing kids that they can possibly be. And so adding a dean of students would really help us be proactive in addressing those things and just give kids the attention they deserve. Again, to reiterate, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody the prevalence of mental and behavioral health challenges are really on the rise for our kids, and we could spend days and weeks talking about why that is. But our role as a school is we address the kids that come to us. We support every single kid that's here, and we're fortunate. We have Mrs. Schlund, our behavior specialist, the mental health specialist. She's phenomenal. We've been really blessed to have really great folks in that role over the course of the year. But her role is to work with students in one-on-one and small group situations to help them really be successful with those things. And right now, she's not able to fully do that because we've had a rise of situations that require either 2 administrators or an administrator and a mental health person to be able to support them. Mr. Zimmerman spoke earlier about those CSAGs. Those are some of the things that she's being pulled away to do. And frequently, those are taking 30 minutes to 3 hours of our day, particularly working with little kids who, if you've ever tried to get a story out of a 5-year-old, it takes a while. With that, we've probably lost a good 30 different 25 to 30 minute meetings that she could be having with those kids. That's really limiting her impact to support our students. And if we're not supporting those most vulnerable kids when they're in kindergarten through 3rd grade, we're not setting them up to come over to the middle and high school and really be successful. So adding that dean of students role would give another person to work with students when they're having those challenging behavior issues, so she can really focus on the mental health. That person would be there so they can help us be proactive and allow her to be proactive working with more of our students so they can develop those great lifelong positive habits. We have been fortunate, as many of you know, we've had, I think it's the 31A grant with Mr. Shiflett to have his support over at OP. He's been doing a lot of really great academic pushing. The amount of times he's in there working with small groups of students is phenomenal. He's able to be there for some of our students with some of their larger behavior concerns and just helps us being proactive. But because he's been over at our school so much, about 43% of his time this quarter, that means the middle and high school aren't getting the services of Mr. Shiflett. And it would be really great if we're able to have that dean of students to further balance that out over the course of the rest of this year. And equally important, in years going forward, without Mr. Shiflett and his grant ends at the end of this school year, to have that person who every single day can be pushing in the classrooms, working academically with kids or behaviorally with kids, supporting at lunch and recesses, and working with kids again at the end of the day. it would be a huge benefit to our kiddos, helping them grow academically, and again, freeing up a principal to be that instructional leader for the sake of our students. And I do want to note, unfortunately, it's been a bit of a revolving door of a position at OP. 9 principals in 12 years is an anomaly, particularly for a school as successful as us. In those 12 years, we had 1 principal at the middle school. She's right here, Ms. Vaughn. But without a dean of students, I worry we run the risk of continuing to burn out that person, of continuing to have a revolving door there. I love this job. I'm not saying, hey, give us a dean of students or I'm out the door. I promise that's not what I'm doing. But I will say it is a very expansive job to be handled by only 1 person. And for the long-term success of our students and the long-term success of our staff, they deserve a consistent person who's able to be there year over year, not getting burned out by this role, because there are very few places better than Orchard Primary in this world. It is a truly phenomenal place to be. So I hope that we're able to get this dean of students for our school. We'd support our kids more, we'd support our teachers, giving them an instructional leader, and we can start closing that revolving door of principals, because that's what our kids deserve. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Turner.
I don't know if there are any questions.
Any questions? You can open up the questions.
I just have a couple, and this is just from my lack of knowledge. What's the difference between an assistant principal role and a dean of students?
Typically, your assistant principal is going to be involved too in the evaluation process, or your dean of students is not tagged with those responsibilities.
Okay.
That's one of the biggest differences, I would say.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, just before I came here, I just did typical lookup of staffing and at what point do you feel like you need a dean of students with the student numbers? If you, I looked up, just for example, I looked up Emily, Armada, and Romeo, and none of them have it. And it looked like their class sizes were roughly the same, student numbers were the same. And not saying that they don't have something organized differently, I didn't call them and ask for it, but I'm just curious at what point that factors in.
Can I share doing some research for this? I do know at Armada, there are slightly larger elementary, they're K through 5, but in addition to a principal, they have a mental health specialist who may or may not used to have worked next door with us.
Right.
A building social worker just for their building, as well as a counselor for there, so they have that greater support there.
Okay.
I believe looking at the state of Michigan, roughly 1 administrator to every 250 to 300 students was what I saw was about the average.
Okay.
I think, and I'm sure, I think you spoke to it depending on the need.
Yeah,
Right, the
yes,
need
I'm
and-
just kind of
Yes,
just curious
but,
about numbers.
yeah,
for
as
them.
far as numbers, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno.
Yeah.
Ms. Vaughn, can we get that information about if there is a state standard for how many administrators per student? I think that would be helpful for us to know that. Anybody have any questions? Mr. White?
When we had talked about it, June, budget season, whatever it was, one of the things we'd heard, we had heard you needed support. And what it asked was to define, which the front page gave a little better indication of that, but when we go, if we move forward with this, to create that job posting, what priorities, responsibilities, if we have a refined list of that to know, because as you go through, different tasks would require different experience, different certifications, different education. So if we have, a lot of tasks that we can maybe get you support in a different way, maybe we can get 2 people for under the cost, depending on what those tasks are. If you guys can figure out what specific tasks would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that disciplinary piece would be really high on our priority list. Somebody with a background in just working small groups of students too, if somebody had a tutoring background as well, would be a great thing. But somebody really with those disciplinary chops and somebody who's able to support those kind of these kiddos and just allow the person in my role to be, hopefully me, to be a true instructional coach for our teachers. Because again, I truly love this place, man. I don't say any of this to be like, oh, give me the students or I'll leave it or anything. That's not at all my intention. I'm like, I just truly want what's best for these kids.
Mr. Bruno, Mr. Shiflett's there right now on a daily basis, right?
close to it. Usually Tuesdays and Thursdays he's at the middle school, but Monday, Wednesday, and Friday he spends a good chunk of his day with us.
Okay, how many hours is he there on those days?
It depends on the day and our need, but I would say on those days between 8:30 and about 2:30, so roughly 6 hours a day.
Okay.
3
On
days a
those-
week.
So, on the days that he's like, on an average day, it sounds like there was probably 8 to 10 things that get shifted from you that go to the secretaries.
Yes.
So on the days that Mr. Shiflett is there, do those 8 to 10 things then get shifted to him?
Most of them, yeah, and I would say that number gets really shrunk down to, maybe 1 or 2 things that aren't being able to be addressed by either Mr. Shiflett or I. Because I can give you, we had a day not long ago, I was working on a task that needed to be done for our watchdog program, getting some STEAM activity set up, and we had a behavior come up at the same time, and we were able to divide and conquer those things where on an ordinary day, that kind of thing, the watchdog things either wouldn't have gotten done or would have consumed most of my weekend getting that kind of thing done.
Okay. And then, on your support staff numbers, were the office staff included in that 36?
Yes, so that would include our office staff, our mental health specialists, our paraprofessionals who work with our MOSI students. As many of you know, we have the MOSI program for the consortium with Inwood City and Dryden. Our paraeducators in our WIN program, as well as our luncheon, recess, and all those different staffs there.
And then you talked about Armida, Romeo, and what else did you say?
I looked up Romeo, Armida, and Italy City.
Okay. Ms. Vaughn, do you know, we usually compare ourselves to those schools that are in the VWAC, what that consists of, if they're elementary or OP level as far as?
No, I can't reach out to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You said Romeo, Emily City, and
Well, he did. Romeo.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm not opposed,
Did you
if you
say
guys
Armida?
know more close comparisons to what we have. that would be
Right.
better.
I think it would be helpful to have that comparison as well.
did you mention another district? I'm sorry, I heard Romeo, Emily
Armida.
City.
I just brought up what he had.
I'm sorry.
I know we.
Yeah, Romeo's.
To be fair, I don't know how big it
Significantly
was,
bigger,
North Branch had principal, assistant principal, dean of students, and a bunch of office staff, so. that was-
Anyway, help us to understand what's out there, and if we are behind,
Yeah.
we get caught up
Absolutely.
and whatnot. So I know a lot of times we compare ourselves to the VWAC or other, ranking
Yep.
different schools, so I think that information would be helpful as well.
Mrs. Green?
And, sorry, one more, sorry. If you were to get the dean of students, do you have, I think Mr. Ray kind of tackled this, like, do you have specific tasks that you would kind of already identify that would move?
Yeah, if I was to outline the day of a typical day of a dean of students, my hope would be from about 8:45 in the morning, right after drop-off, until lunches and recesses start. I'd love that person pushing into classrooms and pulling out individual groups of students, one-on-one or groups of 2 to 3, either sitting down and providing academic support where it's necessary by pushing in, or pulling out to work with small groups of kids, just on how do I make good choices, how do I become, the truest grad rater like we talked about there. I would love to have that person during our lunches and recesses be able to be present as frequently as possible there. That's not a slight on our lunch and recess ladies at all, they're phenomenal. But I can tell you from last year when we had Mr. Gothier and Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Ziglowski coming over, on those days that we were able to have them over, the amount of office referrals that came to my office during those recesses were significantly smaller. I would say 50 to 75% less likely to have a kid come in on those days. And then once we could get through that lunch and recess time between 11:10 and 2:35, I'd love if that last hour of the day, we could again get that person working with small groups of students on either behavior things or academic supports, just for a couple of different reasons. Number one being that behavior side, that's again a great role of the dean of students is to support kids making good choices, working kind of in concert with our mental health specialists and myself. And then academically too, as you all know from at the end of last year, we talked about our shrinking amount of para-educator support because of the ending of 11T funding. We went from 6 WIN paras to only 3 this year. We'll see what if that affects our academic results as we head into this upcoming end of year testing. But having another person who could also give our teachers that support on academics is phenomenal. Again, you're not going to find many better teachers in this country than you see at OP, but they're taking on a lot, and so having that extra support for them to be getting an end of the day would be phenomenal.
So it sounds like a lot of one-on-one behavior, working like that. Is there any task that, you talk about like applying for grants, stuff like that, is there any administrative tasks that would also be associated to that new role?
Yeah, absolutely. I think taking some of those things off of our secretaries would be huge. You know, Mrs. Niedermeyer does a lot with our budget. It would be nice to be able to take that off of her plate so she can really focus on the attendance and working with kiddos as they're coming in. Mrs. Stone does goodness innumerable things when it comes to enrollment, when it comes to just some of the state reports that we have to send over to Mrs. Myers and those things. Getting some of those things off of their plates so that they're able to truly take a 30-minute lunch break, which I could count on two hands how many times I've seen them combined take that over the last just about a year now. Having somebody think about those things would be huge. Even having another person to work on some of the grant stuff with Mrs. Merrifield and I, or just to run the building on days when Mrs. Merrifield and I, we have amendment season coming up right now for Title I. It'd be awesome that that person could run that for that time. Because my hope is anytime we bring on a new leader, it's somebody we're coaching and helping to grow to become the next principal of Orchard Primary or the middle or the high school or maybe a superintendent one day. We should always be looking to have that continuous growth and helping our people get better.
Well, I just wanted to confirm, this is just a communication that we're doing right now, correct?
Yep.
We're not making, okay, all right, that's all I need. Thank you.
My remaining questions are all financially related, which I'm bring
Okay.
up in finance. These are just questions for Mr. Bruno.
Perfect, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? I do want to thank you, Adam. I hear lots of good things about the team as well. So I mean, really, the teachers, the administrators we have in Almont right now are incredible, and we're very, very, very grateful, and you're doing a great job.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank y'all. It's great to
Thank
have
you
your
very
community.
much. Appreciate you.
Y'all stay warm out there too.
We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we will have a presentation from Verigy.
Okay.
Thank you.
See our last name right, it's right. Right. Price is right, is that what you said? Right is right. All right, yeah.
It's either goes Bob or he refuses to take a test.
Yeah, well, you know that, right, that's for sure. Just want to do a little bit of I'm sure you guys already know this, but Friday, we have to do that longer version today. So I just want to show right over.
Yes, okay. We can do that. Yep. I had some slides, but I'll send you.
But like,
Yeah, I got you.
right.
No problem.
Awesome.
Okay.
And this is in,
That is it.
Nate.
Yeah, he essentially said you're not very good. She's like,
Yeah, it's just doing that, but we could do this. Let's try it.
There you go.
I think he's right outside the doors.
Sue, do you need this back? Pardon? You want this back?
no. I'll give it for you.
Thank you.
There's something that I thought I already knew. And I didn't show up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're ready to review?
Okay. All right, we'll continue here with communications, and we have Vera G here with us. And just as a reminder to the board, so Vera G is one of many providers of energy efficiency solutions, and we've been working with them for the last few months, I would say. Actually began some talks in early fall as far as getting a free assessment for the district and checking out some energy efficiency solutions. So tonight we have Dr. Jeff Studebaker, an account executive with us, and also Paul Rice, which he's a project developer for Vera G. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here tonight. We're excited to see what you have to present to us.
Okay, well, thank you for having us, and we'll try to be concise and to the point. We met with the Buildings and Sites Committee Friday afternoon, and they wanted us to basically present essentially the same information to you as a group that we had last time. So we're going to give you a really high-level overview of what Vera G is, and then get right into the heart of what's up, what the opportunities are here at the district. So I'm going to try to blast through some of this real quick. Vera G, you probably haven't heard of us. We are national in scope, however. We are across the country. We're broken down into regions, and that darker green is us here in the east. Every region has this area of expertise, but we're able to lean on each other for help. We're known in the east region for our control solution sets and HVAC lighting solution sets, which is a good thing because that's what we're talking about here. So the concept behind what Vera G does is a little bit different than a normal architect and construction management firm. A construction firm and an architect model, they're going to develop a project. It's usually going to be a huge price tag, and then it's going to be, build it, design it, build it, and go forward from there. And they're going to give you a 1-year warranty. And while you're in that process of going through the build, they're going to change order you. All right, so our model's a lot different than that. Basically, we are data-driven. So we've already done the analysis here with your utility spend on natural gas, electricity, and water. And that sets the baseline. Any improvement project that is contemplated then should self-fund over some period of time after the thing is completed through energy savings. So for example, if you've got an outdated control mechanism in buildings, so the building's running nonstop or not running or whatever happens to be, an updated controls package will allow you to have better control of the building so that you're not heating it or cooling it when you don't need to be, or overheating it or overcooling it. Lighting is another issue. You can save a great deal of money having appropriate lighting throughout the facility and controlling those as well. But the concept here is that you take that utility cost at the beginning, implement the project, and then while you're paying that off, hopefully you'll still see some savings as well as meeting the payment for the actual project. And then once that payment is done, hopefully you're still left with savings so that after a period of time, once the project is paid for through your utility spend, that it actually then leaves you with a lower cost at the end. So then our range of services, virtually any ECM that you can name, we can do, so, or help get in place. So we're going to see a few of those today. And then the last thing I'll say before we get into the project here is this is a free portion of our service. So we do the analysis. You know, it's on us. We know that we're at risk at not getting the project, right? So, but in order to be able to provide you a project that makes sense, we feel like this is the necessary part. You have to dive in, you got to do the work so that we have a good understanding of what's actually happening instead of just kind of throwing a number out there. You know, and what would be a good, fun thing to do, whatever. This is a meat and potato kind of project. This is the kind of thing that will really help the district. So basically, we've gone through that process. We're at the end of the free phase, essentially, where we are setting out some options and maybe making some recommendations in terms of what we think should happen, and then giving you a high level, you know, a 30,000-foot view of what the scope could be and what the budget could be attached to that, and then help the school figure out how to do the funding on it. And then from there, it's in your hands and basically going forward and trying to implement something. So I'll let Hope, I think you just clipped it.
Okay. So I think Jeff alluded to an assessment that we do for all of our customers. Where we start is with this information. We gather utility bills from the district and we do an assessment of where you're at from energy cost per square foot and energy use unit per square foot. So, and then we compare it to the Energy Star portfolio standard for schools. So this is the standard. It's a little bit hard to see, fuzzy, but for schools it's 48.5 energy units per square foot per year. So that's a national average, a median. It takes into account all the climate zones throughout the country and averages things out for heating and cooling combined. So, and then so how are we doing here at Almont? You can see that here's the standard again, 48.5 kBTU per square foot. That's British thermal units of energy. The high school is at 57. The middle school is at 76, the building we're in. And then the primary is 78. So all the buildings are above that median, which tells us, hey, there's some opportunity here. A little bit of savings that we can squeeze out of the building. So, and then we had the bus garage on there too. That falls into the other category, and you can see that it uses a little bit more than the median as well. So some opportunity there. So what does that amount to for Almont schools? If we do the cost comparison based on our energy use per square foot, it comes out to a total savings of $145,000 a year. So again, that's based on your total spend, which is around $430,000 a year. So it's about roughly 25-30%, which we think is achievable through a variety of scope items. And then the total savings over 20 years we have on here, we're using a 4% annual escalation rate. That comes out to a total of $4.3 million over 20 years. That's what would end up funding the project. So how do we get there? This is a list of scope items that we have identified by walking through the buildings, doing preliminary audits, if you will. So we have LED lighting upgrades, so that's going through and replacing all the lights that are not currently LEDs with LEDs, or sometimes we have LED lamps that could be still improved with lower wattage lamps. Lighting controls, that's occupancy sensors, recommissioning existing sensors, just utilizing the lights in the buildings the best that we can based on our occupancy patterns. Weatherization, building envelope, that's weather stripping, insulation, any improvements we can make to the shell of the building to keep the heat in the winter, keep the cold air in the summer. Water conservation, upgrades, that's plumbing fixtures, low flow, reducing the water usage in the buildings. HVAC controls upgrades is the heating and cooling, just using the equipment better, more efficient and effectively throughout the course of the year. And then asset management and maintenance integration, that's really something that we can add on to our controls package that helps Jason and his maintenance team to keep up on the preventative stuff that is going to keep this equipment running for the life of the contract. So getting into each individual building, this slide was more district-wide, and now talking more specifics about each building. Starting with the high school. The high school runs on air-based controls right now, which is called pneumatics. So you can see some of these devices inside the equipment here. This equipment is mostly original to the building, which was built around the late 80s, so 35 plus years old. You can see one of the older pieces of equipment here on the roof. We're recommending a project that is self-funding with energy savings. So we're really focused on upgrading these controls to electronic controls, refurbishing existing equipment and extending that useful life. And then we have on here also future recommendations to consider, just based on the age of the equipment. It's gonna need to be considered in the future. Equipment replacement and geothermal heat pumps is something that could be considered if a full project was looked at. The middle and primary schools are very similar in nature and they're built around the same time. So we look at upgrades that are reusing a lot of the same equipment. We think that the equipment still has some useful life remaining. So we're going to be looking at upgrading the controls, replacing any sensors that are out of calibration, and then performing recommissioning and reprogramming of the controls to focus on energy savings. So for instance, if we notice that a unit is running 24 hours a day and it doesn't need to, we would update those controls so that it turns off at night. And then again, the primary school, very similar to the middle school. Just some photos here of the existing controls that are considered older model. Some may be original to the building. And then this is just another future recommendation to consider. These are upgrades that we've done at Verigy with other school districts around the country. LED lighting for the football field, and then a new track. A summary of the scope that we've discussed, and we have a couple options here. This first one considers pretty much everything we've talked about at all of the facilities. LED lighting, controls, building envelope upgrades, water, and HVAC controls. So what does that look like financially? So that's just south of a $3 million project that generates around $145,000 a year of energy and water savings, and additionally a operational cost savings of $4,700 a year. That's the savings you would get by replacing older lamps and removing ballast. These are items that Jason and his team have to deal with on a daily basis to keep the lights on and working. So by replacing all the lights, you'd be removing that task and allowing him to repurpose labor.
One thing I would point out here, for a second. So these are cash flows, these are models. And it's models based off of our current understanding of what is happening. So there's a couple of key points here that we need to point out. So first of all, we've got a escalation rate of 4% in there. And when we get down to this at the end, you know, we can model that however you all are comfortable with it. Industry standards seems to be indicating that utility costs are going to escalate between 3.8 to 5%, somewhere in that ballpark. When we were here Friday, I think we were modeling 4.2, 4.3, something like that.
4.5.
And so we brought it down to 4. That's based off of some white papers that are out there and so forth. So we're pretty comfortable modeling at a 4% escalation rate. We know that consumers has asked the Regulatory Commission to increase it 15% next year. So they won't get the 15%, but they're going to get something. You know, they're going to get a chunk. It's going to be probably more than the 4% we're modeling. There's some underlying industry-wide reasons why you're going to see probably even higher than 4%, but we're trying to do a conservative model so that it's not showing you this fantastically wonderful thing that's going to cash flow in 2 years or whatever. We're trying to be as realistic as we can. The other piece here, and this is more solid information, this is actually coming from PFM itself, is that 4.5% interest rate on an energy bond. I want to talk about that briefly. An energy bond is essentially a loan. You do not have to go to the community to ask for that vote. You, as the governmental entity, can approve that vehicle. PFM is basically the broker. They will handle how to get that to market. They've got a flotilla of attorneys that will help keep you clean and legal and do all the stuff that needs to happen there. So in terms of any kind of RFP project, or in process, I should say, you would want to have that process married up pretty tight with whatever you have to do with PFM. That way the money is available once you get ready to pull the trigger and get the work done. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit. And the last point on this chart, I know this is hard to read, probably impossible to read out there, right in here. So what is that? That's year 11. Based off of that set of numbers, this project would pencil out or pay for itself within that window, around 11 years. Now you can see that your negative cash flow in here for a while. However, PFM, when we run these models, we just run it straight. We don't monkey around with where the money is going to actually go and how you're going to pay it and that type of thing. PFM can structure that repayment on that loan so that you're not spending $79,000 of your own cash there up front. They can rework that a little bit. So, and of course, then that 4.5 is not locked either. That's going to, you know, that's their best estimate today. They will go to market, and hopefully you'll do better than 4.5. You know, so I'm actually surprised at that number because there's a neighboring school here working with PFM. It's almost exactly the same dollar, and it was less than that. It was like 4.3, 4.4, depending on how long we financed it. So we'll see on that part of it. I think that's all I really need to talk about there, I think. So option 2 is basically peeling the controls package off of the high school. So what you're getting in option 1 is just a tick under $3 million potentially. Remember, that's that high-level budget number. And that's basically going to buy you years of life potentially on the high school equipment. It's going to give you better control of that building. You're going to save money on the electricity in terms of the lighting and the controls package, as well as, you know, having a more efficient building on the weatherization and that type of thing, as well as saving water billing with your water conservation measures. The bugaboo here, though, is that the high school equipment is really old, and that building needs a lot of love and care. And in order to do a package like this, where it's an energy package, instead of talking about a $2 to $3 million number, we're talking about 8 to 10 all of a sudden. And that's ugly. And that makes that payment enormous. So this package then takes that controls package out of the high school altogether and is contemplating an immediate go for a levy, try to get the whole thing done instead of trying to stretch your economy out into the future. you're going to have to make that decision as to what you think is appropriate. But, you know, for the dollar differential, you know, you're going to get yourself some time going to the larger package where you're getting that control set. So it's, and we can, the other thing we should also mention, there's some conversation amongst the team, the broader team, and conversation amongst our internal team about scope items that we could potentially peel out to bring the price tag down. We talked about possibly removing the lighting package altogether. The problem with that is that that's your low-hanging fruit. We can't put a Cadillac version in for the dollar that we're contemplating, but you can put in a good package that is really good for a school, and that actually helps fund the whole thing. You could pull the high school out completely and focus on the other buildings, or, you know, one of the things that, you know, you could contemplate is pulling the weatherization scope out altogether. You know, because a lot of the stuff on the weatherization, Jason probably can do. And that would take that price tag out of our package and lower that price tag. And you're not going to get a huge return on investment on the weatherization piece. So that's the one item out of everything where, you know, the cost is a little higher and the return's not that great. So that would be something that you could look at. And that would put the price tag somewhere in between this 2.1 over here, which is that lower option without the controls. It would put you probably, I don't remember the number, we ran it yesterday, I want to say it was 2.4, 2.5, somewhere in that ballpark. So with not a huge reduction in the savings from the all-in package. You know, your 145,000 in savings on the all-in package. This is only about 109,000, taking the high school controls out. And you're $800,000 less than the total bill. So those are your two scope options that we're producing. And obviously this is part of our conversation with you, is to massage what you want to have done, what makes sense. And then, you know, obviously you'll go through an RFP process, and then once you've selected a vendor, then you can negotiate at the end there exactly what's in that contract, what's in the scope, and all of that at that point in time. So, and that's basically it. I hope I hit the mark. I don't know if I did or not.
You did really well. Thank you.
So we tried
Thank
to
you
blast
for
through
this
it,
information. I know it's a lot of information,
Yeah,
but
it is.
definitely wanted to get in front of the entire board. So again, thank you for being here.
Problem.
I assume questions at this point then.
Yep. Yep.
Mr. Burns?
What kind of efficiencies would Jason get out of doing the full control spec?
So right now, he has minimal control. Is that fair?
At the high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more labor control
Yeah.
versus here where I can just log on right now and tell this to shut off.
Exactly right. So with our package, so first of all, we're not a proprietary package, so it's open source. So it's not like a Johnson Controls or a Honeywell or a Trane where you're locked in forever with our product. Hopefully you'll like our product, right? And you'll continue to use us or whatever. But with our package, he can run everything off of his phone. There will be alarms that will go off on his phone if something shuts off and freezes. So for example, we just did this package at Coldwater Schools, and there's an alarm that went off, notified that one of the control units for some reason stopped working on one of these cold days, and the temperature was plummeting. But they knew that in time to be able to deal with it. And actually that particular first time around, it was just a simple fix off the phone. No one actually had to be deployed to the building. So he would have total control. And he could delegate control to whomever else he wanted and levels of control. So teachers could have a little bit of control, however much he wanted to give them. But he would have total control. He would be able to visualize every room, every piece of equipment in the district, which right now he's got some of that in some of the buildings, but it's not running exactly the way that it probably should, which is why the recommendation is that you do a recommissioning and refresh in these newer buildings.
So for the controls 2.9 package, especially since you would essentially put newer controls on 37-year-old equipment, looking down the road, if we were to go for a levy, would we be able to utilize and essentially plug and play if we were to go for, future recommendations of new equipment in the classroom, especially at the high school level? Would the new controls that we would put on the individual classroom units be plug and play? Would we be able to reuse those and have that be a proponent of, advertising or putting out for a new levy that, hey, we've already done some of the groundwork, there's cost savings.
I think the backbone of the system would definitely be able to be reused.
Okay.
So I'm talking about wire, conduit, some of the controllers, if it is in the near future. Some of the stuff that's in the equipment, if I'm being totally transparent, may be more cost effective just to order on the new equipment as opposed to like take it off this and put it on this. But to answer your question, yes, once you get that new piece of equipment, it plug and play into the new system, all the backbone's there, all the programming's there, and as long as it's not a drastic change in the system type, it should be reusable.
So the absolute answer is yes. Even on the end unit, you can pull that off and take it on there, but there is a labor cost to that.
Sure.
You might be better off just replacing it outright, or it may be that the new end equipment that you're putting in already has that stuff in there, it just needs to talk to the backbone, because the backbone would still be there, and that would be fine. So that's not a huge expenditure, but. Any other questions?
I did a follow-up with Mr. Burns. So when you talked about the app and stuff, is there like a payment for the app at all, or number of users that you have to pay per month or anything? If you said it, I might have missed it, sorry.
It depends on what we're doing. So there's levels, right? So there's this Cadillac version, and there would be a subscription to that, but it's, I don't even know what that is on Orchestrate. But there's other pieces that are not, and we're near there. First year is on us anyway, as part of the package, to make sure we're commissioning everything, because there's always going to be bumps in the road when we're in that first year, trying to get everything hammered out. But then that subscription will be part of the contract for a period of time. So it won't be an over and above.
As you were talking in terms of modifying the packages, it said, possibly taking out the high school. What if we concentrated mainly on the high school and the biggest bang for our buck? Could we replace, if there was a future item of replacing the boiler, could that be one of the main things, and then controllers and whatever, to get us to a certain dollar amount?
Yes, you can.
Would that still then be 20 years?
Probably. The best case I can give you on that, Coldwater High School, their project was a similar situation. The building really needed a lot of help. They had contemplated a levy that got shot down badly, but they were doing a lot to that building. So we came in and said, what's the bare bones need? They had a boiler system in there that really desperately needed to be repaired. I mean, they were living on borrowed time. As a miracle, they actually were even running. So instead of doing a geothermal package, which is what really should have happened, because they don't have air conditioning anywhere in that building, we did an energy savings project and we replaced the boilers. I don't know, comparatively speaking, square foot differential, but that project was about 3.3 million, somewhere in that ballpark. Boiler replacement, LEDs in that building, and then our controls package. So I don't believe there was any weatherization in that project. And I don't know if that 3.3 included the lighting package at their elementary school or not. It was around 3.3. So it's a little bit higher here, just due to the nature of some of the stuff that we had to do with those boilers. And every job is specific to the site. That can be just ballpark. So.
Mrs. Smith, do we have a copy of this PowerPoint anywhere where we can see the numbers and analyze them a little bit more specifically? Since that we truly you could not read those numbers, at least I couldn't. My little eyes couldn't.
I have laser eye surgery.
Well, we were standing right next to it, and it was really hard to read. So. We can provide you with a PDF of it, yeah. So we can't send the PowerPoint over emails, it's too big.
Right.
So, all right.
Questions? Thank you so much.
All right, guys, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for being here.
Vice President Bjorn.
Okay, we're going to move on to Parent Square under communications. I took some feedback at our last work session and took that to heart and took some, I initiated some action steps on the behalf of Parent Square and wanted to reach out to, I started with reaching out to other school districts utilizing Parent Square at this time. I chose a school district in Macomb County, Centerline Schools, and also a school district in in Oakland County, which was Lamphere Schools. They both indicated, when I spoke to the administrators in the office there, they both indicated that the parents were extremely happy with Parent Square. The parents appreciated the feature that allows them to receive messages in the way that they want them to be received. So whether it's via text or email, they just really appreciated the feature of having that two-way communication. They didn't have to, it's a one platform, so they weren't having to look at Remind or an email or a group text. It's all on one platform. Also, due to some of the demographics in these districts, the translation feature was also appreciated by the non-English speaking parents. For both school districts, the onboarding process was user-friendly as Parent Square makes themselves available to assist as needed as well. I contacted Jeremy Tigner again. He's the one who came on to the board work session to provide some information. And I inquired about a pilot, just to make sure, is this a good fit for Almont Community Schools? He can provide this to our district. The only fee that would be charged would be an onboarding fee of $14.55 that was shared with you in your packet. And this is something he cannot waive. It's just part of the onboarding process for Parent Square. But at the same time, if we were to adopt Parent Square at a later date, we would not be paying that onboarding fee of $14.55. Due to the initial concern about especially the after-school communication, and again, in the multiple apps and communications that are out there being utilized, Parent Square would allow us to communicate from one platform. And there's other features too, such as putting out district newsletters. That could be classroom use, that could be district use by your superintendent. Regarding the pilot, I don't think Mr. Zimmerman is here anymore, but I did speak to Mr. Zimmerman, and as far as starting with like maybe a group or small groups of staff members to pilot this, Mr. Zimmerman agreed that he'd like to utilize this or pilot this with his coaches. So given the time period, it'd probably start the pilot, like you, Mr. Wade, probably with the spring. So the spring coaching staff. So that would be my recommendation if I were to move forward with this. There's a 3 to 6 week onboarding process. Parent Square offers free and unlimited PD training for all the school stakeholders. There's live instruction, there's webinars, there's a learning management module as well available to our school stakeholders. There's a train the trainers model, so that's always helpful. If you can designate a couple of your leaders, they can take the lead on this. There's various packages that are offered. The basic package, I believe it was shared with you, is right around $6,300 per year. We pay almost $3,000 with School Messenger, but of course that does not include that two-way communication. They don't offer that feature. Our contract with School Messenger expires August 2025, and as Parent Square has a 98.9% retention rate, they're pretty confident that we'd be happy with their product, and really would like to encourage us to give the pilot, a try. So I would like to proceed with the pilot, but I would like to take questions at this time or any concerns for Parent Square. But that's the homework I did since the last work session.
Mrs. Smith.
Great.
Mrs. Berkman had mentioned some concerns about the things that School Messenger can do that we found out that whether Remind can do that in sending out, not Remind, Parent Square sending out the homework, not homework. Report cards, thank you.
I'm sorry, that they could not send out?
Can they?
Oh, can they? Oh,
So if School Messenger is used to send out our report cards,
yeah,
if we get rid of School Messenger and then go to Parent Square that doesn't have that feature,
I'm
we need to
assuming,
know that.
I mean, yeah, I talked to these two districts, I'm gonna assume that they, but I would like to confirm that.
Confirm.
But I'm gonna assume they have those features. The one disconnect that we had from School Messenger overall was the two-way communication, whereas Parent Square, contained all of that.
So the main thing that, basically what the problem is we're trying to solve for those that are just coming on, maybe you can explain to them what we need to solve that is the biggest problem, why we would need this.
For the Parent Square, I feel like there's a lot of, again, as I stated, there are a lot of staff members and coaches utilizing different forms of communication to get out to our parents. So some of the feedback that we're receiving, and it also came from two former board members, I know they don't sit here now, but that there was, concern, or is there a way to go to a one-size-fits-all platform? And so Parent Square is one of the ones that was researched, and yes, it can do that. It can offer that two-way communication. The parents are getting, a ton of, and I'm sure you could probably speak to that, you get a lot of messages, but when they're coming from different platforms and different modes of communication, is there a way that we can streamline the communication? So that was the charge, I think, or that was my challenge, to try to dig in and find out, and working with my IT team, coming up with Parent Square, digging into that, and thinking maybe this is something that would fit for Almont Community Schools. And then during the November work session, I know that there's some, concern as far as maybe it was price, cost, reaching out to other districts for a recommendation, talking to a couple of staff members, and actually I spoke to Mrs. Berkman specifically, and we just talked about the two-way communication feature, and she's aware that School Messenger doesn't offer that. So it's just, again, a way to look at a one platform. Is it gonna, again, and that's why I'd like to pilot to see what kind of features or, what kind of challenges or obstacles are we against, is it something that we should just stick with School Messenger, or are we gonna appreciate the fact that this Parent Square offers that two-way communication, and it's one platform?
Mrs. Smith, would it be possible in the pilot, maybe, mentioning concern for like teacher communication, would it make sense to include one or two teachers?
Absolutely. So I'm sorry. So I should have also shared. I know that like the music. I know that came from like the music. Some of the parents there too. So like with our choir and our band program, they were also a group I was going to start with. I mentioned Mr. Zimmerman because we did talk about the spring athletics specifically, but I also wanted to target, just as you're saying, like a teacher group.
Yep.
So I thought maybe the band and music program would be appropriate, especially too because there's some after-school things that they like to communicate to their parents. So yes, I would like to also include some teachers in that, of course, yes.
Mrs. Smith. So I've used Remind for about 6 years. And I went to log in the last time we started this, and top of the page it says, Remind is now part of the Parent Square family.
Right.
Chat, two-way text messaging for the classroom and families' preferred languages, always free. So I don't see why we pay a onboarding $14.55 when the feature that we need to solve it is free, and they're going to keep it free.
Okay, but Remind is gonna, I believe from what Jeremy shared with us, Remind is going to phase out.
So that wasn't on there. So that's.
Yeah, within 5 years was, again, he didn't want to pinpoint that, but he thought, in a short term,
So
that Remind is going to phase out.
So it would be, again, I would say, if it's going to phase out in 5 years, we have 5 years of free to go to. What it needs is, if we need two-way communication that gives something that the family's preferred language, and we can pilot. A lot of the coaches are, they may use different things, but we have one that would possibly work. What it needs is the district to say, this is what we need you to use. And we have to figure out how to go through and then set it up for them, versus paying a fee for something that's free for the next 5 years.
Except for Remind, I don't know if it's a certain amount of users, like if we all went to Remind for staff and teachers.
Just create an account.
Yeah,
So
I have to double check on that. Yeah. Yes.
Actually, so at Orchard Primary, they used up all their licenses and no one else can actually use Remind because I think you have to put an address in, and Remind now says, okay, you have enough users, to add more users, you have to pay.
Yeah, I want to say that it was with the, the amount of subscriptions,
Yes.
right? And so that was our worry.
We have so
we
many
enough.
free accounts internally in the district per
That's-
building.
That was one of our problems.
So, would it be helpful to, like, kind of look into what you just discovered with that Remind and Parent Square thing, and then understand what we have with Remind, how many accounts, are all those accounts still being used? Like, are they active? Are there some, maybe there's some that haven't been used for years or something, we just need to close, I don't know, I'm not sure how it works. Like, if every year it restarts or whatever.
I can contact Remind, but the last time we did speak to them, they said, that building used all their free giveaways of subscriptions. Anyone else that wants to join, you have to create a subscription for your district.
How much the building is on it,
I am unsure from my knowledge, but I do know a majority of teachers over there, they prefer Remind or Class Dojo, which is another program I am unsure to pay for. I do receive emails from them periodically, but it's another program that they use to contact parents two-way also.
I can dig in and find more information out about,
I think-
about the Remind. I thought it was referenced in the last month, but I will dig back in just so that
Well,
we
it
have
sounds like
that
there's a new
information.
development, if they're moving into Parent Square, they're free, that's
Well,
what.
I know Jeremy assured that Remind is under their umbrella and that Remind would be phasing out. So, and then I thought there was a certain amount of subscriptions with Remind, and that was part of our problem because we have, a lot of staff and coaches that are trying to utilize this communication. So I thought there was a push towards the Parent Square, but I can find out some numbers to see if we're at that threshold. Or maybe we could buy some time for a couple of years before we have to jump on, to something like this.
That's right.
Mrs. Smith, and this would be to Ms. Fon, December 17th, I sent you an email, and I said before we jumped into something like this, could we find out exactly what our staff and our coaches are using, survey them as to what priorities are, and in the meantime, we've got two-way communication with email. 100%, all of our students, all of our parents have email addresses. We've got two-way communication if we want that. That is stored by us where we can refer to it, because I know that that was a big portion of it as well. I know that, I think as coaches, I believe coaches are given an email, and I might be wrong, but I think that that would be pretty easy to do. As you're saying here, they're only going to onboard us once, but if the onboarding is the training portion, and we're just having some coaches and a couple of teachers do the onboarding now, to me,
It was just a pilot.
they're not gonna charge us a fee then to onboard again when we have our entire staff?
They're not. No, it's a one-time onboarding fee.
And they're still gonna be then here in the fall for our staff
Right, for training. It's
for 3 to
unlimited.
6 weeks?
You mean
For
for?
onboarding of staff? You can clarify that, please.
Sure.
That,
As far as, onboarding to me is that fee, right? Is that $14.55? Yes, but I will definitely clarify.
and did you ever do the survey by chance? That I asked?
I didn't survey the staff, no. I talked to people,
Staff,
but I didn't
parents,
formally
That would be nice,
put
if
out
you could do that, so that you kind of have an idea of, is there something here that is not covered, such as the sending out the report cards? We need to know those kinds of things. I think that that's important before we invest in something. We might utilize, or might not give us everything that we need.
there must be some confusion because I thought this was a charge by the board to, research a one platform for communication. So I must have had some miscommunication there because I spent a lot of time researching this. So I will definitely answer these questions and let you know and provide an additional update.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Sarah, you have a question?
Yeah, just really quick, and Colin might answer this too. So with we have a limited amount of subscriptions. From what I understand when I first came on, our goal was to have, like, be able to see everything that was happening. And the response we got from the community is that a lot of people don't read their emails. And I know you had brought up the emails to a communication, and that's why we wanted to go on the app. I don't know, like, the cost, I don't know the cost aside and all that, but I just want to confirm all that. It is because of the registration, we couldn't get enough people on that.
From what I was told by Parents Square / Remind in the past, I can double check and contact you.
Okay, and then so, just for my clarity, because I'm not very tech savvy, if you have Remind, like right now in the building, you can see both directions on every communication from like what our teachers are sending to our parents and what our parents are sending back, or no?
Remind, we do not have that ability.
And Parents Square?
Parents Square
would have
does,
that.
that's
Parents
correct.
Square we would.
Okay, I think
It's
that,
one of their features.
I think that was the charge that,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, that Ms. Long was given, and a lot of those board members are vacated now, but,
Yeah.
so I do think that was the purpose of it.
There was one
So
vacancy.
that we had a record as the board, as the
That's
administration of, hey, this is what was said by teacher A to parent A or
Yeah.
student B, because we had communication ongoing, just so you guys knew.
Yeah.
We had parents come in and present, and there were teachers that were communicating by text message to students, and we had no record of what was said or done. And we thought that was a very big liability. Not that I know if this cost is enough for us to cover that, like, I'm not speaking of the cost, but I think that was the charge, just so that we had the record
Along
of
with
what was
that,
happening.
there's multiple groups using multiple
Right.
apps. You've got WhatsApp, you've got Snapchat, you've got all these different.
Remind, Band, Class Dojo.
Yeah.
Plateau is what, yeah, there's a lot, so.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern was, I think that the parent had said that the teacher was using Snapchat with the kids and with minors and whatnot. And so we felt that was not appropriate, and we needed to have everybody on one system.
I think we'll get there.
I think so, yeah.
We're reading through each of the things, and I appreciate the effort that you're putting into it. It's hard to get
Well, Mrs. Smith, yes, yes, students don't look at emails, and what then was asked of the staff in the past few years is, since students don't do this, we would like you to find something that works and use that.
Right.
Again, we mandate students, you want your information on what time you're playing sports tonight? Check your email. It's a matter of training students to do what is asked of this board and the educators, as opposed to all the educators jumping through what the students want.
Right.
So
Right.
that's kind of where I think that there's a little bit of a miscommunication, shall we say.
I have one just in lieu of that. I know that one of the teachers that presented or made a comment. If a sport is canceled, does the student have access to their email at 5:30 if the sport's canceled at 6:30? Like, is that I just had, is that a reasonable assumption that they do? Cause I honestly don't, I don't know.
If they have their
I don't know if
device,
they choose.
if they have their device,
Yeah,
they would.
they would,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
But we have to, right, we
Right.
know we can't assume that every
Right.
child has like a cell phone, right? But
Right.
if they have their Chromebook, they'd be able to access their email.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
Right, because students don't put their email down there.
That's what I'm asking.
Huh?
They have the ability
They
to,
can.
but I will say usually kids.
Mm-hmm. Right, because they don't need to. That's correct.
I didn't know if you could or couldn't, and if you couldn't, then that would present another, another
Right.
issue, like if you're mobile,
Right.
if you're,
Right.
if you're coming home from the dentist and something gets canceled.
Right, yeah, you can't
So you're
use your
speaking
Chromebook.
more like the high school level then?
I'm thinking of both.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
Well,
I would say,
We're gonna address,
sorry.
the one this week first, and make sure they address properly. Thank you. Mrs. Fry?
Well, Mrs. Smith, I think that in regard to that, from what was being shared with me this past year is we had a few coaches that were changing their practice time on a daily basis, and that's not healthy for our community as a whole, in the sense that you've got one student that's going here, and you've got it scheduled in your family plan on how it's covered, and you've got 2 other kids, and now this coach has just changed the practice, has an expectation that students are there. So I think that there has to be something that comes to Mr. Zimmerman that, when you put a practice schedule together, practice doesn't change unless there's really an emergency type situation. And that shouldn't be on a daily basis. So that sort of thing.
Yep, sorry.
That's okay.
I would just say like at OP especially, this being OP parents, like most of the communication goes to parents who don't have school emails, that sort of thing too. So that's where the app is a better option. Middle school, high school, maybe the students aren't checking their emails, but OP, kids aren't checking their emails.
Yeah, more so, we're both OP parents, so I do feel the same with what Mr. Burns had to say.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we're going to move into building and site, and that is Mr. Burrow is the chairman, Justin Burns, and James Smith.
Yes, that's the maintenance, I'm sorry, maintenance update.
Okay.
Yep, sorry about that.
As far as RFPs, I still have one that's open. This was an RFP from back in October. But due to potential savings and more stringent guidelines prompted me to repost this. The RFP was due back this past Friday. I'm currently evaluating those bids that we received. To kind of, while I'm on this list, going through it, I'm going to jump over to C, sinking fund projects. I'm not going to post it up on the big screen, but it is updated within the drive, as things dwindle down, we're kind of down to those larger chunk projects that we've gone through. So the exhaust fan replacement at the high school that was approved by the board, those fans are on order. They should be in by the end of January. The fire panel replacement, I'm working on scheduling that installation. As far as rekeying the district, and this applies in each of those categories. If I've told you in the past, it's the district owns the key blanks and the key cylinders, which are, I don't know if proprietary is the word to say, they're unique to our district. They're not going to sell them to Emily City or anyone else in the BWAC or anyone within a certain circumference within Michigan. So that's something that will utilize cost savings by me purchasing them. And then once I do get this door RFP underway, then I'll look at getting bids for the labor portion of that rekeying. Same thing moving down to the middle school, things around the queue. Of course, the gym floor refinishing, that can't be done until over the summer. And then just the windows replacement at OP, that's underway. They're requiring a 30% down payment to cover the initial window purchase, which once they're purchased, then I'll be in possession of. So that'll be a special check. I'm just finalizing as far as getting them set up as a vendor, getting a PO created. That'll be a check that'll come across for $31,104. That covers the sinking fund. And again, in the drive shows everything that we'd already previously discussed that had been completed. That's all down in the projects that have been previously presented to you guys. Moving back up to B, the lawn maintenance contract. Now, for those of you that are new to the board, this is one of 2 service contracts in the district that I'm aware of, that it's a multi-year contract, but every year I bring it back to the board for approval. My hope is to, once these run out and they go back up for bid, I would like to approach the board to see about just making a 3-year contract like everything else. Within the confines of that contract, if we weren't happy with it, we still have an out. So, it's my opinion that coming to the board every year is just kind of why are we doing it? Because if we really had issues with the contractor, any given contractor, for any service contract that we have, we could utilize our out within that contract. So with that being said, this contract was initially signed, I believe it was March of 2023. It began in May of 2023 for the lawn. So this will be the last year. I'm going to do something a little bit different this year, in that I'm going to go out for the RFP for the 2026 season or that next spring, we're going to do it in the fall. So that way there's not snow on the ground, so prospective individuals, if they do go out for bid, they'd be able to see the district and get it, but we'll have those conversations. I did reach out to the staff at each of the buildings, as well as reaching out to, because part of the task for lawn maintenance is striping of the sporting event fields. I did reach out to some coaches and staff, just the typical concerns, came across, like for example, speaking with the football staff, there was some timing issues where the paint was wet, but there again, the guys can't necessarily paint, if there's rain in the forecast, they got to time it just right, because if they were to paint the evening before and it was to get a washout, they'd have to repaint. So just minor things, minor concerns that we'll hit them on the fly. Likewise, talking with the other admin staff within the 3 buildings, everyone was generally happy with the services that were provided. My recommendation would be to continue with yard services for the remainder last 3rd year of that contract. And then, like I said, this will be the last year, and then we'll make a decision going forward what we're going to do with that.
Can I get to that?
Sure.
Just, I would like to go over
Absolutely.
this just so we can have our recommended by committee. Oh, did you read that? Is there any questions about that? Or Jason? Just have the back sheet. I want to make sure I'm staying here. Purchases of contracted services shall be negotiated either verbally by request for proposal or through the bid process as determined by the superintendent. Excuse me. Such services that cost more than $10,000 annually require the approval of the board. Our lawn service provider, YSI, is on a rolling contract renewal. This is the last year on the contract before we go out to bid for the 2026 season. We've had the same company for the past 3 years and are happy with their service.
You just have to give a interim committee and this one is effective, you just have to give not approval or rejection. That would be your judgment.
Mr. Wade,
That's
you good?
Mr. Burrow. Mr. Burrow.
Mr. Burns, you good?
Mr. Wade.
Yeah.
Everybody's good?
3-0.
All right, thank you.
And then typically, whoever is the chairperson to make sure that everything's good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Jason. I know you have more.
On to D, track update, as we're, I've gotten some prices in the past, we're trying to get a more precise budgetary number. I'm working with a couple companies right now, one of which I had spoke with at 4 p.m. and said, hey, I thought you were giving me some numbers. I expected them to be good, they're not here. So I'll get back on with them to get a more realistic number of what it's going to take to get that track up to what would be considered competition level for the old fence. That's our main goal. So we already, in a separate building and site, we discussed the potential of possibly in-house addressing some of the drainage issues. I've already begun to speak with some of the contractors around to see what their recollection is, because obviously some of the sidewalk installation along that north side of the track and some other things were done before I came into the district. So we're sorting some of that stuff out, and hopefully I'll be able to have a number, more of a budgetary number that I can present to Mr. Vaughn, and we can pass it along prior to next month's work session. Filter first update.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
Jason, on that note, I know we were gonna do a walkthrough on the track, but
Yes.
that's gonna obviously be delayed with all the snow and ice.
Yeah, I
on the
would.
track. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you didn't think I was gonna brush by that, but I think we're gonna
You
delay.
guys skate faster?
I need to go. I'm game. To that end, I spent the weekend consolidating pictures that I've taken over the last 6 or 7 years, so that you guys can go through and say, okay, that's a drainage issue. There's a puddle. Anytime it rained, I went and documented as much as I could. So that could be maybe a walkthrough that you can start getting a feel
Well,
of
and
things.
I think that when we go out and we walk, and as we get into nicer weather, thinking about conversations you and I have had, Jamie, regarding, it was never really an issue until the sidewalk was put in. We may have to have it cambered first to see just what's going on, to see if there was any sort of collapse or any disruption to a particular drain tile that's not allowing that water.
Drain tile. So, I don't think there's any drain tile there.
So, yeah, we'll begin that. But Yeah, this is not the best time to walk. I don't even want to walk in my truck right now. But yes, we will as soon as weather permits. You know, even if it's cold out, that's fine, but.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
we
you don't
won't
have to
be able
wait
get
till
this
spring
anymore.
to do,
Right.
right? You just have to clear off the snow and ice, okay? Yeah. Okay, we'll go with that.
The filter first update, you know, that's where we've gotten the grant from the state of Michigan and to meet the requirements by June of 2026 to have consumptive water be filtered within the district. Engle, which is the division of the state that is kind of taking care of that, they're still formulating some of their policies. One of the biggest ones right now that's not finalized is a final policy on how they're going to address filtered fixtures, right? We know that the drinking stations, we have to accommodate and have 1 per 100 pupil count. So based on that, that's how many we have to have within the building. But when it comes to say like OP for the classroom fixtures, you know, there's some guidelines for that. We can't just stick a filter on. I mean, anything that I believe is a fixture that is hasn't been replaced since 2014 has to be replaced with a lead-free fixture, as well as they're finalizing some stuff. I've been sitting in on some webinars. I've got another one tomorrow that they're going to be going over some stuff. So that's still evolving. That's also something too that may come into play with some of these energy audits and whatever direction we were to go with a self-funded bond of source energy bond, because some of what they're doing could be incorporated with that as well. So we've got time. I mean, my goal was to have the majority of the work done over this coming summer. So, and of course, you know, I will be purchasing the product, and essentially we'll be going out to bid for the labor aspect of doing this. So there's still some moving parts to it that we're fine, we're in good shape. So there is a drinking water management plan that has to be completed. It's not something that I have to post or necessarily turn in. It's just, it's the state of Michigan says have it done by the end of January. So, and part of the preliminary walkthrough to come up with a list for me to actually go out and ask for the grant money list to establish a list. So it's a matter of, I've already got it on a spreadsheet. I just have to put it over to a template that the state of Michigan recommends. So that'll be done and we'll be compliant with that. There were some questions regarding the PA system, especially when we were doing the Blue Point drills, primarily whether or not we could, if the children were out to recess. The middle school is the only building that has exterior PA system. The high school and OP do not. So with that in mind, it was designed for anyone that was on the circumference of the middle school. Now, we do have a speaker that's not working, but we did do a test with the speaker that is on the other side here by Mrs. Malloy's classroom 5, which is on the south end of the playground-ish. The children were out there, Mrs. Vaughn and myself were out there, as well as Mr. Bruno. You know, they pulled it, it went off. I couldn't hear it, not amongst the however many children, 70, 75, whatever it was. You know, it's where I then immediately started walking, and because I wasn't looking behind me, I don't know if I could hear it because I was closer to it, or the kids at that point had already been scurried into the building. So, with that being said, I did have our PA people out on this past Monday. We're going to get this outside speaker working, but then they're going to give me some prices for potentially putting 3 speakers in a directional manner that would be appropriate for the playground, just to see what it would cost, just to put out there. You know, with the main being that there is children out there. Now, with that being said, there are visual strobes on the exterior of the building that they jump out at you. But to put that added layer of having an audible as well, we're going to entertain and at least get some numbers to look at it. So, unfortunately, you know, with PA systems, it's nothing that we could think of. But maybe there's some safety dollars or whatnot we can cross the bridge.
Mrs. Smith?
Thanks, Jason.
I had
You
a
got a clarifying
question.
question?
Yes, I had a question in regard to, coming back to the filter first. When was the last time that we had our water checked in each of the 3 buildings, and were we fine with the lead levels? I'm hoping the answer is, you know, yes. And
I came to the district in August of 21. It was done prior to that. I have no literature or no paperwork showing any of the results. We're getting some clarification as far as, and then there may be somebody here, or there may be somebody that's watching or listening at home who might say, oh, no, that's not. I don't know necessarily where it's, going forward, it will be mandated that the water is tested on an annual basis. I don't think it was that stringent in the past. So, going forward though, anything that is considered consumptive will have to be tested. There will be a log that I will have to track when it's done, what the results are, and yeah. So that, and again, that's for whatever is considered consumptive. We won't be able to. Not every fixture within the district will be fixtured or will be filtered. It's not a requirement. So anything that's not filtered will just simply have a. And you've already seen them on some. It's not potable water. It's not for drinking. So, but I do not have that information.
Thank you.
For moving into finance, and that would be Mr. Wade, Ms. Fred, and myself.
Checks written?
I have some. You want me to start?
Sure.
Okay, I had 45455. Like a sports, I think, Kathy, sportswear, X-Grain sportswear.
X-Grain, sportswear,
So
basketball.
my question was about, is that through that BSN that we just signed up, or I didn't know there was different names for it.
I think X-Grain is his own vendor. It says basketball backpacks. Yeah, X-Grain is the vendor.
Okay.
So they're personalized.
Okay.
So
I just know we did that contract with BSN, so there's a couple of them on there, like 45487, sharp threads, things like, I didn't know, like, are we maybe just pricing things out, or I don't know. 'Cause I know we talked about, the benefits of that. Maybe you can speak to that, Mr. Wade.
Some of the things, as you go through, like Nike, some of their uniforms, they don't fit well, so we looked at others. Some of the things is their turnaround time may not be what,
Okay.
if you go through and they say, okay, it's gonna take 7 weeks and you want it in 5, then you may look elsewhere. So it's an agreement to look to them, but it's not a contract that. we
Right,
have to.
yeah, I just wondered, because, a few of them that weren't through BSN, so I just wondered what the reasoning was.
and I don't know if BSN has the ability for personalization, but
Okay.
I think that's what this was
Yeah.
paying for was.
Yep,
I
sure, okay.
think if that was for girls' basketball, I think it's something he did before. Maybe we had the contract, so he's just renewing some of the backpacks.
The next one I had was 45494.
Okay, that's for Fort. Craft. Okay. Where?
shirts. That is through the internal account.
But for
Is to pay for Quiz Bowl shirts. From Tanya Halverson.
And then I have another one, 45519. That Jason might be able to speak
From
on
Cintas.
that. It was for Cintas. Are they still doing the rug stuff, or would it be a
They are still doing the rugs, but they also, for that, how was the dollar amount?
like 2,100?
Okay, that would have most likely been over the winter break. This is the time of year that we do the semi-annual kitchen hood inspections at each of the
Okay,
schools,
I wondered if
as
that.
well as the fire extinguishers.
Okay.
Now, the reason they're a little bit higher this year is because they did them on the 3rd of January, and there's certain recertifications for the fire extinguishers that have to happen for each given year. Now, in the past, I would have had them come during the 24 season, but because we crossed over to 25, we did both years. So next year, even though it'll be a year from now, it'll be like, oh, it's a lot lighter.
Right. Okay, and then my last one, Kathy, 45575.
Yard services.
Was that like multiple, like a couple months? Like what was the time frame for that for YSI?
Okay. Salting parking lot, sidewalks. Looks like the whole month of December. At all 3 buildings.
So do they salt when there is no school? When we're closed?
They salt essentially when I tell them to salt.
Okay.
Like, for example, there's no school today, but there was a meeting, there was an event going on, so we made sure that this area was at least up to up. So I work with them just to
Okay.
make sure. So, but every invoice from them is compared to my salt log. And if it doesn't jive, I don't sign off on it.
I believe you, yeah, I just wondered.
And on their invoice, they do list every single day, sometimes morning and afternoon applications.
I agree.
So it's detailed.
I just wondered if it was 1 month, 2 months.
Yeah.
That's it from Mr. Rain.
Yes, check number 45503. It's a tuition reimbursement.
Yes, okay, so we had 2 teachers that on their behalf, had applied a special ed tuition reimbursement grant that gave them, I think it's $800 per credit hour reimbursement for their education. And that is an in and out. So I received the check, deposited it, and then put in a check request to pay back to them.
Thank you.
So that's what that is.
Number 45511. Again, that might be the same thing. It was to Baker College.
I'm sorry, 45511.
511.
45511?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure, let's see. That's for a dual enrollment invoice for a student. A class that they had signed up. Introduction to Health, $300.
So, okay, then the last one then is 45512.
So students, that is to Mrs. Bordeaux, students are able to get a reimbursement for their textbooks for dual enrollment classes. And so that is a reimbursement for their book. And there are strict guidelines on, they have to attach the course syllabus, they have to attach their receipt. They have to notify us if they're gonna return the book.
And then we would pay the difference of the refund versus the cost of the book, because they don't get, refunded 100%.
Correct.
And I keep a very detailed spreadsheet on what every student is taking, what class they're taking. They're allowed to receive, I think there's a certain amount that they're allowed to get reimbursed for. And so I make sure the cost of that class does not exceed their request for textbook reimbursement.
Just so you know, I wrote paperwork on that,
Oh.
so I was familiar with
Got
that. I
it.
just wanted to make sure we were still, one of the things that we had said is that students are expected to sell back their book and then show you what they received for when they sold it back. And sometimes you can't return them, obviously,
Yeah.
as professors
Yeah.
have those new additions. I just wanted to make sure we were still following that.
That is still, yes. And I
Excellent.
go through a very studious audit to make sure I look at
There's
every
a lot
piece of
of them.
paper that they submit, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. They took yours, okay? Oh.
Those are good.
Okay. Thank
Move
you.
on to, please take time to take a look at the account balances. Any questions?
Mr. Wade?
Yes.
Just one question, and this was one that I asked Mr. Zimmerman for the athletics account. There was a new account that was, or new one that was established, no money in it, obviously. Nationals dance team. That's the first time that I had seen that. Is that something that we're looking at, or where did that come from, I guess?
Yes,
I look back at the 2024 athletic accounts also, and it was there as well. So it's been on there for a couple of years.
Okay.
I believe that was.
You know, Ann Hunter did
And
that sort of
I
thing
think that
years
was
and
it,
years
and
ago.
then when it transferred to the new, they put a new one, and then the balance was transferred to the new. New,
Okay.
it's just there.
Is that something that we can get rid of since there's, you know?
Yes.
make
Clean it up.
simpler? Okay,
Yes.
that was it, thank you, on the athletics.
Session. Any questions for this? I was good with that. Student activity accounts? Questions? Anything to report from those?
No, I'm just happy that all the balances are positive, so we're doing good.
All good. We move on to RFP for food services.
Okay, I did sneak in a document in your Google Drive. It's a Board of Education work session update. I wanted to update you on the food service RFP process. And I also wanted to highlight, so number one was, an OP Dean of Students proposal. If we were looking at that, I wanted to give you those numbers. So that is for you in that document. Number two, I wanted to address the food service RFP process. So the process will take over 8 weeks. I don't know if any of you have been through this before. I'm going to try to not freak out, but I'm in good hands. So on December 12th, I met with the members of Chartwell's, Karen Haas, Deborah Iserman, and Stacy Moyer, and they shared the details of the timeline of the RFP process. On January 17th, I received the official MDE email stating, that it's mandatory that us go for this food service contract rebid. Today I attended a Zoom webinar, which I believe was recorded, of the procurement series. And just to get this before you is, right now we share services with Marlette. And, sorry, the first step is to confirm with them that they want to still partner with us in going forward for the next 5 years. One of the main services that we share is Stacy Moyer and her time and her pay. I did reach out to Brandy
Chartwell's did tell me that Marlette does still want to partner with us, but I just wanted to talk to her and get confirmation myself. The next steps is to, we're going to need to be in communication going forward about what we're going to be doing. If we want to continue our relationship with Marlette, I wanted to get some facts and figures for you of how exactly much it would cost if we did go on our own, if we brought food service in-house, if we went solo with Chartwell's ourselves, and what is the cost savings benefit of partnering with Marlette. So that will be future coming to you. On January 22nd, it's mandatory training to go on the bid process. And however much you want to share, I'm an oversharer, so I will bring you through this process with me if you want to. I'm going to keep giving you updates and links if you care to poke around in there yourself. There is a procuring a food service management company contract, the bid process for school sponsors overview link that I put in this document. Basically, I outlined all the details of the RFP, and they're in this document too. There are a lot of steps, and like I said, they give you a very nice timeline, and I'll let you kind of review that instead of going over every single step and the time that it takes. There are boilerplates that we can use. I myself have never gone out for an RFP, but in short, it sounds like once we post the RFP and other vendors come, they will be inspecting all of our kitchens, all of our equipment, they will come on our premises and look at everything with a magnifying glass. And then they will be presenting their quotes, and we'll of course, compare that to Chartwell's. They'll be putting in a RFP also. So it'll take some I'm trying to keep breathing. It'll take some very detailed process of doing this, and it is again mandatory by the state that we do this. And then we do submit everything to the state, and they will review everything that we're doing. But Chartwell's has assured me that they will be with me every step of the way, and I know I have Kim's support, I know I have the board's support, so we're going to go through this together and get this done in time. So that is the RFP food service. Another thing I wanted to talk about was I've been working on for over a week doing a full audit on all the grants to provide a grant master, and that document is also included in the Google Doc that I had posted. It includes the current year-to-date balance of all the grants. Some of them is going to take a little bit more auditing because they're carried over several years, and so it's just working with our finance system and getting all those numbers out is just going to take a little bit more work, and I just want 1,000% accuracy. So, but for this year's grants, we did get quite a few new grants. As Jason, we've been getting the filter first, the special ed tuition reimbursement, the Kerner grant, the library grant. Adam and I did work on applying for under title, a Section 41 bilingual program grant. And so we are just, immersed in grants. And having said that, I also, for fun, supplied you with a pie chart and a graph of where all our revenue comes from. I wanted it for myself, so I thought I bet you guys would too. So it includes all of fiscal year 23-24, and I did year-to-date 25 as well. And I thought it was pretty cool myself, but just to see the percentage of what comes from the state aid, what percentage comes from grants, and which grants, I thought it was just really beneficial for me as I'm still learning. The
Kathy,
fourth-
we appreciate your efforts.
Oh,
I just wanna
thank
let
you.
you
I was
know.
geeking
We know
out
that
on
you're
it.
working hard to do that, so really
Thank you.
appreciate your
Thank you.
efforts.
It was fun. It was nice.
Appreciate your geekiness here.
Yeah.
She loves data, which is a
And
good,
I'm
it's a
gonna like
good
come
thing.
alive now. It's
It's
like,
a good
oh,
thing.
my turn. Okay, so the fourth thing is in process, that we are gonna discuss the amended budget for next month's meeting. I'm pretty excited about that too. I have been working on that. And I just wanted to, the fifth point is just to kind of give you an update on some professional development. I've enrolled in a 3-month MSBO course, a guide to navigating grants for education, which the first one was totally awesome. I'm doing a 2-day MSBO course on 2025 financial strategies. Wow. I feel like going to the hill myself. February 25th, the ISD is going to allow us district managers to come and partake in a watch party for PFM property tax workshop, which, by the way, all those property tax checks are starting to come in, so that's pretty exciting. Like, whoa, sorry. And then there's just been several MSB webinars on the recent cyber security issues that I've been passing on our IT team and enjoying myself. So, that's it. Thank you. You guys have any questions? Jason's giving me the snake eye.
I have questions. You talked about the, I talked asked about anything, right? The OPD.
Yes.
So do you have, I know you're doing the budget amendment for next month. Are you going to be getting us anything for the 25-26 budget as far as the impact and the legacy cost for that position?
Yes.
Okay.
And it is in this document. I did a full year salary. So for our OP Dean of Students, I kind of echoed Mr. Jay-Z as like an entry level, maybe a Dean of Student for OP. What that salary would look like. I projected out what a whole year retirement and FICA would be. If this person needed health benefits, I projected that out to get you a full year salary. And then I also projected out what the cost would be.
Where is that at, Kathy?
It's called BOE Work Session Update. It is in the January work session folder under finance, and it's with the all the internal
And that,
accounts.
you put that in there this afternoon?
Yes, yeah.
You're looking at it.
And then the work session.
And then just go.
Oh, Mr. Wade can see that you're looking.
We got it open somewhere.
Yeah.
That's the one I'm not, okay, so, but it doesn't have the fund balance, it doesn't have, I was thinking it didn't have the whole thing.
The whole impact.
How it,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
I wanna know what the 25-26 budget was gonna look at,
Oh,
what's gonna impact on this one, and then it looks like, partial year paid, so it would start before the end of the school year, so for me, I think, we need to see a whole lot more of the financial impact on that part of it. And
Which-
then- Go ahead, Becky.
Which, keeping in mind the 31AA grant, in which Mr. Shiflett is currently being paid,
Right.
is expiring September 30th of 2025. So as we go into the new budget year for next year, I don't know what's going to happen with his position, but his funding will either have to get absorbed by the general fund, or we will have to pay for a DM student out of the general fund anyway.
Yeah, I think, so, and I'm sorry if I didn't make myself clear, that's what I want to see, like, I want to
Okay.
see how the hit is to the general fund.
Okay.
What that impact is for the 25-26 year,
Yeah.
what that impact is for the amendment, the budget amendment coming up. Those are all the dollars and cents that I think, that I would like to see. I don't know if my fellow board
Mhm.
members are in agreement with that. So that's the stuff I'm looking for. Where does it take the fund balance? What does it do, the longevity, all of that information.
I did share with Mrs. Frederickson that to move the needle 1% is about $180,000. So if we're looking at a 12% fund ending fund balance of revenue, a percentage of revenue over expenses, it would, take another 180, between 160 and 180 to bring it back down to 1%, to, 1% less, so. Just to, give you some kind of idea right now.
Mrs. Smith?
Well, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
In regard to that, we also have to take a look at, as board members, we have to look at a much bigger, broader picture. And part of that is, if we just give a step to the staff, what is the hit? And I know that you shared that with me, I don't know if that was shared with the entire board or not, but you did share that with me. And then adding on this position, I mean, there are a lot more things that we have to take a look at as we deal with the entire picture, plus the fact that we have declining enrollment. And we have no idea what the state or the federal government are going to do with the possibility of the Department of Education being scrapped. God really don't know. So I mean, there's a lot of things as we go forward and we add legacy costs to the district that we as a board have to take a look at before we make healthy financial decisions, I think.
Governor will start the budget process in February. We got to start looking in March for having those numbers, so if we need to make corrections, we can do so in a timely fashion. Have the early projections by May then we get a month to go through and look at it, but yeah, those are all things that we have to keep in account. So keeping track of potential retirees, all that will come into play. And the things we can't control, the rates, if they increase, if they decrease, which would be great if that happens, but so we'll be conservative in the process.
And, as these state aid reports come in with our, the revenue reports and the money that we get from the state, they are giving us a 5.75% MIPSERS offset, another 3% one-time MIPSERS offset. So they are as we talked about, temporarily funding the school in lieu of giving us that permanent per pupil foundation allowance. But I know the state of the address by the governor, I believe, is September 25th. A little late, but we'll know more then. And I've been in very much touch with MSBO and just who's constantly, getting the word with the legislation and thank you.
That will bring us to policy. That's school choice, Ross and myself.
Just a quick school of choice update. During the January 2025 school of choice window, Almont Community Schools accepted applications for students in all grades except Young 5, 2nd, and 4th grade. With the school of choice window now closed, the totals are in for the number of students that applied. Almont Community Schools received and approved 18 applications. It's important to note that none of these applications were for new or transferring students. All 18 applications were for students who either moved after school started or were on release from another district. Moving on to Neola updates. The board adopts bylaws and policies for organization and operation of the board and district. Bylaws and policies may be adopted, amended, and repealed at any meeting of the board, provided the proposed adoption, amendment, or repeal shall have been proposed at a previous board meeting, and once proposed shall have remained on the agenda of each succeeding board meeting until approved or rejected. Bylaw 0131.1. The district's policy service, Neola, has provided the following new and replacement policies. This is the first read. So under our policies, we have policy 1130, 3110, 4110, conflict of interest revised. Policy 6110, grant funds revised. Policy 6111, internal controls. Policy 6112, cash management of grants revised. Policy 6114, cost principles, spending federal funds revised. Policy 6325, procurement revised. Policy 6550, travel payment and reimbursement revised. Policy 7310, disposition of surplus property revised. Policy 7450, property inventory revised. Is that three? Ma'am, yeah, okay, perfect, thank you. Next, to new hires. The Board of Education approves all personnel. With the resignation of Kevin D. Kaufman, there's a position to fill for the middle school art teacher. Ms. Lewis is excited to recommend Ms. Autumn Smith for the position. Ms. Smith comes to us with many art credentials and is eager to get into the classroom here at ACS and start working with our students. Mr. Spear is recommending Mr. Dennis Thomas for the position of lunch aide at Almont High School. Mr. Thomas recently retired from L&L and has a granddaughter who is currently in A.S. school.
Just one quick question. Usually they have, like, when they're gonna start, are these people, have they already started, or?
The only one I don't know for sure with fingerprinting was our lunch aide.
Okay.
So, but, yes, the other one, it started with the PD,
Okay.
PD day on Monday.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, we're good. Perfect, thank you. And regarding just, again, with the board's request for more information, I'm not going to recommend that the board consider a new position at this time. I'm going to get some information back to you and make a decision at that time. Right, moving on to teacher change in pay. In order to be eligible to advance from one lane on the salary schedule to a higher lane, the teacher must make written proof of the completion of courses and/or degree requirements in the form of an official transcript of credits from the institution from which the credits were earned, master agreement between the Board of Education and the Almont Education Association. Kelly Petrovich is moving from a MA to an MA plus 15. The pre-labor day start. The Lapeer County ISD has asked us to consider the attached pre-Labor Day start resolution. The Lapeer County ISD applied for a pre-Labor Day start with the state superintendent. The attached resolution declares this district supported the waiver.
I have a question about pre-Labor Day start, just in general. If we were to discuss it after Labor Day start, how would that affect the ed tech students?
I believe, actually, it would probably affect them that they would lose out on that time, especially if the other districts decide to do, to start, before Labor Day.
I'm new to that.
Then,
topic,
yes,
so I'm
no,
very
that's a
curious
great
to
question.
see.
It's a great question. Yeah, to be honest with you, I think there's even a little push. I believe a couple of our districts do start like a week prior to when we begin. And I know that there's a loss of a week there, so, yeah, they started like a week prior. So I know that it's always a wish for them to start, at the same time. I was not in favor of making that recommendation, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, great question.
Just a legacy question. How long have you been a part of this resolution?
That's a great question.
Has it been like as long as anyone can remember?
Gosh, for a long, long time.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, look at this.
Out there.
Yeah, I think we've had it renewed once, so that it's what is it, for 5 years?
5 years.
And so I think it's like it's been 10 years, because this is a renewable year.
Well, Mrs. Smith, in regard to that, if you go and look at legislation, when the legislators made a change that mandated that school start after Labor Day, that was the year that they allowed these kind of contracts to come forward. So that was the year that it did happen.
Mrs. Smith, just for some background, we had been for 2 years ago, we moved back for Alice training.
Yeah.
So, and then we went back for something else last year, was the recommendation. Is it still Alice training?
That we would move back, like we didn't start?
We moved back 2 years ago, I think, to get prepared for the Alice training. I don't know if that was that district.
Yeah, I can't
So-
recall, but you could be right.
So,
Yeah,
we
you could
did
be
not.
right.
Well, then excuse me, Mrs. Smith, I think that you're correct, that last year, when fourth grade moved up and eighth grade moved up, we needed that extra time, I think, to get all the classrooms situated, and get everything moved. So I think that we did a shift again there.
Everybody's good? Thank you. This is approval of overnight trips. The Board of Education approves all student trips which require an overnight stay or out-of-state travel, policy 2340. There are trips that several of our student groups may get invited to attend that require a quick response. This motion will allow Mr. Zimmerman and/or Mrs. Von Hiltmeyer to approve the request and respond in a more time-efficient manner to the invitations. And of course, it's rate of recognition, just wanted to, we want to continue to put curriculum, that is why we are all here, of course, right? Want to make sure curriculum stays on our agendas, but letting you know that Ms. Lewis and some of our team members will be presenting success period and winter interventions to you during the board monthly meeting, which is on Monday.
Okay, that will bring us to our questions and comments from the audience.
You know, it's such a long meeting, I've got a whole list now.
Be nice. This is the
Just a couple
first
things.
for a few of us.
Kathy talked about the budget, the revised budget, and I wasn't clear on when she's gonna have that.
That
February meeting?
sounds like.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And the other one, and I apologize because I have issues with my hearing sometimes, so the, what's it called, veracity or?
Verity.
How does that get paid? Is that in the savings that they make, and they take so much of the savings to pay for themselves? Because they don't do that for nothing.
They get paid through their project management costs and the controls themselves are where they make their money. So it's part of the bond, goes to them. And then we pay for the bond, it starts to pay for itself.
Yeah, but I mean, how do they determine, do they take a certain percentage? I mean, if it's a $5 million project, do they take 0.5%, 1%? What is their?
Emma says I can't answer that, I can't.
Yeah, you can get back.
Yeah, they don't,
I'll go back.
I can talk to you after.
Okay. Because I mean, obviously, there's going to be some cost to it because they aren't going to do this for nothing. So.
Anything else?
Oh no.
Okay. Any questions or comments from our Board of Education?
Mrs. Smith?
That's great.
Just going back to finances, one of the things that Mr. Wade usually does, you always take a look at where we were last year at this time. Do you have that ready, or? I'm sorry, my bad. But if you could share that with us, that'd be appreciated.
We are on par, I think it was within 0.1% with what we were last year. Athletics is 6% higher than we were last year.
Is that due to like referees?
30% increase is what the
Yeah.
conversation was.
Okay.
The increase, so something to keep an eye on going forward in terms of, we usually, in the past, we've gotten to the point where we had got the spring season and, there's no money left. Well, we had worked on siloing, so the increase in the referee costs, it's not just the overall cost, it's that they are starting to require more officials for the games. So instead of 2, they may require 3 or 4. There will be information coming out in terms of, for districts, additional qualifying for some sports, you have to have a certain number of officials for it, so that could.
So some of these are unforeseen. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
Mrs. Smith?
Earl?
As a new member of the board, I don't know exactly how it's got to look, but I think we need to do a more in-depth discussion on both Verity and PD at some point in time. Is that going to be the next work session? Is that the intent for
Yes.
both of those? Okay.
Yeah,
And then,
and additional information.
okay,
Mhm.
okay, perfect.
Yes.
And then, Kathy had made a comment about grants, and you might be able to answer this like right off the cuff, but if not, like, are we capturing every grant we possibly can, or is there, like, you do feel we are?
We are discerning which ones are worth it,
Right.
because there are some grants that
A lot of compliance
that
tasks.
require way more manpower than we're, but
Okay.
yes, and in that document, I also provided a link to MDE's website that you can for yourself go on and look at grants and go shopping yourself. But you will find that most of those grants listed on the state's website, we
We're-
I feel like,
Okay.
we really truly are doing some due diligence there, and Kathy and Adam,
I can't
shout outs
praise
to you,
Adam
yeah,
enough.
lots of recognition there. Another reason that I believe Mr. Bruno brings value to our district is he's very much on top and very knowledgeable in the grants and the title work that he does.
Yeah.
So, but I appreciate the last one, the section 41, which was the bilingual language learners, to hopefully secure that grant, close to $15,000 might allow us to get another aid for our students, and it's well needed.
Yeah.
So we are trying to secure the grants.
Yes.
I feel like that makes the best sense for our district, and with the manpower,
Right.
respecting the manpower
Absolutely.
that we have to oversee them.
Mrs. Smith.
Questions or comments, Mr. Wade?
Mrs. Smith. Ms. Vaughn, do we have any update on the part-time secretary that we posted? Have we got any applications?
Yeah, that has been posted. Yes, it's been posted, and I have not had an update on how many applications we have received, only that I've heard that there's interest, so, but I don't have a number of applications, but I can send a board update, how about that, this week, to let you know what that number's looking like right now. But I know that that was going to be posted for at least 2 weeks, I want to say, externally. Yep.
Ms. Fry, did you have a question?
Yes, and this would be for Ms. Fine as well. Where are we at with the mental health specialist? Is that still posted, or?
It was posted, yes, and we have no luck so far.
Okay.
No luck so
And
far
it's
for the
still
high school,
posted.
I assume the high school mental health specialist
Correct.
position. Yes, no candidates so far.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? I just want to take a minute to thank Mr. Frederick and Ms. Merrifield and Mr. Colin Allen back there. You guys really helped with these meetings tremendously, so I appreciate your time and being here. Any future agenda items? Ms. Fry?
Mrs. Smith, typically at this point in time, we get a report on Michigan virtual high school grades, the pass rate, the success rate, and the failure rate, and how many courses were taken, how many students took those courses. We also get that information for the dual enrollment, what the success rate was, what the failure rate was. And I'm wondering, one of the things I think that we need to discuss that was done in the past is the board had mandated that it took a minimum of 20 students to run a high school class, and I know that the high school itself is going into scheduling. So I think that we need to have that discussion as to the number that it's going to take to run those kind of courses in the future, what works for us overall economically. And that was it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Would like to talk in the future, just a couple of items I'd like to add to our board operating procedures. So I'm going to put that on there for the work session. Good, next one.
Remind me.
Great.
Wait, remind me, Mrs. Smith, Thursday we have our interview. After that, what I would suggest in the early part is maybe set up time for a retreat, board operating goals type thing,
That's
to
what
get some things
I agree with you. You can do that for spring.
work. Thank you.
Anybody else? Future agenda.
Mrs. Smith?
Mr. Burrow?
I move to adjourn the January 21st Almont Board of Education work session meeting at 8:39 p.m.
Support?
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?